Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're watching this video. Cost and management accounting is a 100 marks paper in CA Intermediate Group 1, and it is one of the very scoring papers, but of course only when proper approach is followed and correct type of learning happens in this particular paper. Of course, that applies to every paper and also to this paper. So in this session, let us understand what is costing and what is the syllabus of Cost and Management Accounting paper 3 in CA Intermediate Group 1. Also, what are the various components in this entire subject. For our convenience, we are going to call this costing, so it is easy to use the word every time. Otherwise, cost and management accounting need not be used every time. Though we use the term costing, we can understand very easily that we are talking about costing as well as management accounting. Of course, there are certain subtle differences between what is costing and what is cost accounting and what is management accounting. Those differences are there, but again the point is, when we use these words, we are using them interchangeably. Whenever we use certain word, that does not mean we are always using the correct word. Normally, if we go to a photocopy center and what do you ask for is a Xerox copy. Make 2-3 Xerox copies. That is the thing that we use normally. But is that the correct word? Definitely not. Why? Because Xerox, after all, is one of the companies which makes those photocopying machines. So it is not a meaningful word. It's only a brand. So when we say Xerox copy, definitely that is wrong. But does it mean we should just never use that word and we have to always go to a Xerox center, and though it is called Xerox center, and ask them for a photocopy? They themselves will ask, what do you want? They will not understand. So the point is, we knowing the difference is important, but that does not mean we have to be always very conscious about it. So that is the point to understand. Whenever we are using the word costing, we are talking about cost and management accounting. So what is this subject of costing, and particularly from the context of intermediate level, what is the importance of this and what are the various contents of this particular subject? Let us quickly go through them one by one. First of all, at a broader level, we can divide this subject into 4 categories. Again, is it something like a compulsion? No, definitely not. But when we have a big rock, it will be difficult to break it as it is. So if you make that into smaller pieces, it will be easier to break it. So for convenience and understanding, this entire costing syllabus or costing subject can be just categorized into 4 different areas. What are those? First one is elements of cost. It is not elements of costing, it is elements of cost. What are those elements of cost? There are 3 elements of cost: materials, labor, or we can call it employees cost, and then overheads. You take any organization, it doesn't matter, big, small, manufacturing, service, in India, outside India, anywhere in the world, whatever the type of organization, size of organization, whatever the activities of the organization may be, irrespective of all that, every organization will certainly have these costs, all of them. It's a different story. Some organizations may have more materials cost component, like say manufacturing organizations usually. Some organizations may have more of employees cost, like software companies, service sector based companies. Like that, what are the various proportions of these costs in the total cost? That might change. That might be definitely changing from one business to another business, and one type of business to another type of business also. Irrespective of that, still every business will have all the three. Let us take an example of a bank, for example. Bank will have more of employees cost, naturally, because it is a service sector organization, and overheads cost to some extent. Materials cost will be almost negligible for a bank. But will that not be there at all? No, we cannot say that. Some part of materials cost also will be there. Maybe it is in the form of printing checkbooks, or maybe in the form of debit cards, credit cards, which the banks do print and keep as inventories. So that cost will be there also. But the point is, it is a very negligible amount. On the other side, if you take a jeweler as an example, for a jeweler, what will be the biggest cost? Is it the huge showrooms that they are opening, or the kind of interior that they are maintaining? Maybe huge rent expenditure they may be having for those big showrooms. But employees cost, of course, also will be there. There will be a lot of salesmen and women. Is that the major cost? Definitely not. Yes, there are costs. There is employee cost also, there are overheads also, but still the biggest cost will be the materials cost, the gold itself. So for such type of business, naturally, the component, which is one of the elements of its cost, which is materials, will be more. But again, that does not mean there will not be any employee cost or overheads cost. There will be employees cost also, overheads cost also. But the percentage of them in the overall cost, the total cost, will be different. So the point is, let us say if this is total cost, how the total cost of any organization, irrespective of size, nature, type, irrespective of any place, any organization's total cost can be classified into or split into three elements only. That's all, only three: materials, labor, overheads, or materials, employee cost, overheads. But the percentage of them individually might vary. How much percentage of the total cost is materials cost? Could be different from one company to another company. Like that, their proportions might definitely vary from company to company, organization to organization. However, any organization will have all the three elements of cost. So why are we talking about all this? It is very important because it is universal. Anywhere in the world, these three costs will be there for any organization. So the application of these concepts of elements of cost is universal almost. That is why these three are very important topics to be known, understood, and learned. Do we have them in syllabus? Yes, of course we do have. Materials cost, employees cost, overheads. These are the three elements of cost, definitely, which are contained in chapter 2, 3, and 4. So what will be there in this? Of course, when we talk about the elements of cost, materials, employee cost, and overheads, we need to again understand the difference between the nature of each of them. Let us take materials cost. Materials cost is materials cost. What is there to compute? What is there to really learn too much about materials cost? You purchased some materials, so whatever the cost that you incurred in purchasing the materials will be materials cost, as simple as that. So when we talk about the overall computation or ascertainment of the cost, materials cost is generally more or less straightforward. Somebody, let us say a sugar manufacturing company has purchased 1,000 tons of sugar at so and so price. Let us just for understanding purposes, let us take 1,000 rupees per ton. Like that, if a sugar manufacturing company has purchased sugar cane, then naturally the total cost of materials for that company, materials cost is going to be 10 lakhs. 100,000 is 1 lakh, 1,000 thousands is 10 lakhs. That's it, done. So what is their big deal here? Not that much. To compute it, it is not a big deal. Why? Because all are facts. How much quantity and how much price. If you know them, simply by multiplying you can get the materials cost. But again, why do we have a separate chapter for that? Is it that simple? No, it is not. So what is the actual name of the chapter here? If at all we want to have a perfect name for this, it is not about actually computing material cost or anything like that. It is majorly the inventory control, or if you want to call that management, we can call it inventory management, materials management. That is, it is not ascertainment of the cost, which is very important or which is very complex. It is not. What is the content of this chapter is control. How do we control? Various techniques will be there, various formulae will be used, and as a part of this chapter, which is materials management, let us call it, rather than just ascertaining materials cost. In materials management, what are the various aspects? For example, let us say when you look at this topic of materials, we will generally have to understand it materials management. In that, we will try to know what are different types of levels that can be computed so that they will be maintained by the storekeepers. Minimum level, maximum level, average level, reorder level, like that. So why these are all useful? For materials management, they are useful. Like that, better policy of ordering can be implemented scientifically by computing economic ordering quantity. How to compute that is part of this. Again, in any of these two things, is there anything related to the ascertainment of cost? No, it is not. It is basically materials management. And another misconception also will be there. When we say materials, we only think about raw materials. That is not the case always. So rather than calling it materials chapter, we better call it inventory management. That is better, because that is a real correct content what this chapter has. Inventories. When we say inventories, there will be raw materials also, there could be finished goods also. So these controls and techniques can be used for either of them, any type of inventories. So these are the areas that we will learn in this chapter. Though it is called materials cost, we can call that as inventory management. Computing various levels and computing economic ordering quantity and trying to identify the best ordering policy for the organization. That is important aspect. And there is one clerical accounting type of knowledge area also, that is to prepare stores ledger. Stores ledger. Here there will be definitely some ascertainment of cost also, particularly of the stocks, the closing stock valuation, and also the cost of the materials which are issued to production. So the stores ledger usually is about costing of the material issues. So these are the areas which will be part of materials chapter, if you call it. Rather, we can even call it inventory management. So that is one of the chapters which is part of this elements of cost. Then another chapter is employees cost, that is chapter 3. Simply we can call that as labor cost or employees cost. Again, here also, what is there a big deal to compute labor cost? Okay, boss, you have these many employees. Each employee, how much salary or wages they are getting? you get employee cost. There ends the matter. So normally, for again ascertainment purposes, there is no big deal in computing the labor cost or employees cost, except in the real life. In real life, it could be requiring a lot of uh, effort in the form of computation, because in real life usually the employees will have different types of salaries, different types of benefits. One employee's benefits and salaries may not be equal to or same as the other employees. So different equations will be there, different type of tax considerations like TDS will be there. So those are all practical issues in real life. But as far as learning of the concept of this employee cost is concerned, we don't have to bother about those intricacies. Basically, for cost ascertainment, if at all you have any basis, let us say certain employee or laborer is paid hourly basis, let us say how many hours he has worked, again quantity, and what is the rate per hour. That's all. You got the labor cost or employees cost. So for ascertainment, it is not a big deal here also. Then once again, why do we have this chapter employees cost? We have a separate chapter on that. Why do we have that? Yes, major portion of that is definitely ascertainment, with a little bit of more details, something like labor overtime and labor idle time and how to treat them. These aspects will also be there as part of this. So there is a lot of cost ascertainment type of situations with more details. So can we have any framework for that? We cannot. Why? Because every company is different, every case is different, every problem that we solve will be different. According to the facts given in the question, we have to just do our bit of mathematics. We can't even call it mathematics, it is arithmetic. Some multiplications, additions, deductions, done. We get the labor cost ascertainment wise. But not only that, again here also control aspects are there. Of course, not in as much as inventory control, because the control of the labor cost in real life also is definitely not something which is like materials. Why? Because materials are something which are lifeless. You store them in a store or in a godown, they will be there. That's all. But labor are not lifeless. These are people. So when we talk about people, they are human beings. So the cost control in such cases will be more complicated, even in real life also. So what happens? A lot of factors, even sometimes emotional factors also will play a role in this. Are we going to learn all of them? No, we are not, because for that there is a separate stream of management called HR management. They will learn it in a little more detailed manner. Let us say someone does an MBA HR or MBA with a HR specialization, generally from good colleges. If so, they are the ones who are fit for understanding these things in a more scientific and more detailed manner. But for us, it's only simply two things always. Whenever we talk about costing as an overall chapter, either we are talking about ascertainment or we are talking about control. As we understood in case of materials, ascertainment is also there. Stores ledger is one of those things, but majorly the focus was on control. Same with labor also. Here ascertainment is equally important, and control aspects are also equally important. And how to do that? Control here means it can be in many manners. Like for example, labor turnover is an important aspect. People, employees leaving the organization very frequently. Should employees leave the organization? Sometimes, yes, they should. Still water stinks. People should come, people should go. There should be some circulation of people in any organization, scientifically speaking. But how much? If it is too much, that is dangerous. So like that, these concepts of labor turnover and computation of labor turnover formulae will be there. And those things will have to be also understood. And what are the various ways of trying to keep the labor turnover under control. Labor turnover is good. Completely we cannot say it is bad. But again, anything good or anything bad depends upon what is its level. Salt is good. Salt is important for adding taste to our food. Does it mean we'll put kilos and kilos of salt in our food? No, it is not. So to what extent it is good? That is also important point. So that quantification of what is good is one of the aspects of labor turnover. And to keep labor turnover under control, what kind of techniques or what kind of methods have to be used from a practical point of view. Those all will be part of this chapter. Again, you call it labor or you call it employees cost, as the case may be. Names could be different, but essence is same. We are talking about human beings here. We are talking about employees of the organization here, and how to compute their benefits, all of them getting added together and finding out what is the cost to the company as this employee cost is one aspect. Labor turnover is another aspect. And another aspect is the incentive systems. Incentive systems are important. Why? Because employees, as we just now observed, are human beings. And for better work, they should be incentivized. For a bad work, they should be reasonably punished also. How these incentive systems are to be framed and to be applied in the organizations is one of the other aspects of this chapter. All of them will be part of the chapter called labor. So once again, there is a balance between the ascertainment aspect and control aspect. However, just like materials chapter, while computing the levels or while computing the economic ordering quantity and the best ordering policy for the company, we are using more formulae. Same with employees cost chapter or labor chapter also. Computation of labor turnover, formulae, overtime, idle time, and ascertainment of the cost. We cannot use any particular formula there. Conceptual understanding is required. And incentive systems are all mostly based on formulae. Different people, different management scientists have suggested different types of incentive systems. How to use them in computation of the incentives to the employees, thereby computing the overall labor cost is the aspect. So there will be a lot of formulae that will be used. So learning approach of these both chapters will be majorly understanding the concepts and most importantly understanding the realities of them in a actual real world scenario. But once again, how do we know the real world? We are not into the real world yet. We are still in the classrooms, right? For that purpose, we need a bit of imagination. When we talk about factory, go down, we should have some bit of imagination. Materials cost. Okay, materials are coming into the organization. Truck is coming. It has stopped at the gate and somebody checked the documents. What documents? We will discuss. And then somebody will check the quality, if at all. That is the stage at which it has to be checked. If not, the truck will go down. There will be unloading there. There will be storage. Storage will be done in different ways. All materials are not same. And once the material is in the godown, it cannot stay there forever. It has to be issued to the production. How? When the production requires it, when the production managers and production team requires it, materials have to be sufficiently be there in the store and then they have to be issued to production. Then it goes to production. Then what happens to the materials? Materials themselves cannot convert into the finished goods. There have to be some people who are doing some work there and machines, of course. Put together, they will convert that materials into finished goods. In between, at a particular point of time, if you stop and watch, there may be some work in progress, which is there in the factory. But once the work is completed, we call them finished goods. What happens to those finished goods? From the factory directly, will they go to the market? Sometimes yes, but mostly no. Again, they go back to godown. From there, they have to be loaded. They have to be transported to some other place. There will be storage once again. Then that goes to the customers. So how many people are involved in this entire process? And at each point, there is a cost. That is the aspect to be understood. So while solving or while understanding these concepts, we have to think that each problem that we are solving is a real life scenario, and it is. We are not solving some problems in space. We are talking about the real life scenarios. So if you approach in that manner, it will be easier. Otherwise, what happens? Formula, substitute, answer. Formula, substitute, answer. Got the marks. Well, but not necessarily always you will be able to solve every time in the same manner. If there are some differences in the way the data is given or information is given into us in the question, then the people who are purely just doing these calculations mechanically will not be able to solve those special type of situations. So while learning itself, if you think that every situation is unique, every situation is what I am really facing, Imagine, not that you are really facing. For you, end of the day, it is only marks. But if you keep only marks in mind without considering the facts of the case, without considering the situation, and without understanding why are we doing this problem, first of all, why are we solving it, without understanding that, if you do it for only and only with the marks on the back of the mind, what happens is, sometimes you may get marks also, but sometimes it may be difficult to face new situations. But if you keep an open mind, always any question is fresh, new, we'll approach a question according to whatever is the information that is given in the question. Then with that open mind, if you understand what is actually given in the question, or what we are required to do in the question, what are the facts, information, data that is given in the question, keeping all these things put together and then assimilating all the data, applying in one formula whichever is relevant, will give us the answer. So this process on the paper may look same, but what is the process that is happening in the brain, that is important. In the brain, is it purely mechanical, or is it definitely after recognizing the uniqueness of the case and after understanding this is a possible real life situation? So that approach is definitely what I would suggest, which is to think in an imaginary real life situation as if you are solving this question for someone in real life, for a company, for a factory, and of course use the academic things like formulae, computations. These are things are clerical. Anybody can do that. So if just for substituting some input into the formula and obtaining the answer, we cannot say we understand costing. That is not the idea. That is not the objective also. Objective is to know it conceptually, which means you need to imagine things. That is the same case with any chapter. And particularly for these two topics, which are more again practical in nature in terms of real life scenarios, a little bit of imagination will help, and a practical approach will definitely help in understanding these topics also, as well as applying those concepts in the problems that we might encounter in the exams also. That is about materials and labor. But as I said already, when it comes to these two things, materials cost or labor cost, any of them, for a computational point of view, when you look at the overall picture of ascertainment of total cost, it is easy. Why? Materials is all about quantity, rate, multiply them, you get materials cost. Labor is all about hours, rate, multiply, you get labor cost. So material cost, labor cost is not a big deal when we look at overall situation. In chapter wise, individually, if you look at them, we are going into the little depth of the inventory control as well as the employee cost, ascertainment and control. So that is again a unique situation, separately applicable to materials cost and labor cost. Now onwards, it is all different. Other topics are all different. Even particularly the overheads also is different. Overheads is completely different for the simple reason that, first of all, overheads, whatever we are going to look at, if at all, there is nothing like we are talking about the actual overheads which are incurred. If it is the case, we don't need all these chapters and we don't need the subject of costing also. If you just think about it in a broader level, we have accounts already. We means a company already maintains some books of accounts. All the debit side of the P&L is costs only. That means what is the total cost? Already we know. So why do we need costing? Why do we need this subject at all, first of all? When you already know the cost, what is the point of costing? Looks like. But no, it is not the case. Financial accounting will give broader details about the organization. Overall cost, yes, it will give. But management accounting, we are talking about here cost and management accounting. Here, the management is not just interested in the broader details. It needs to know the deeper details, the minute, small details also the management would like to know. That basic difference is there. So here in costing, or cost and management accounting, whatever the name we give it, the focus is on going into the depth of each of the items. In just trading account, we say purchases, enough, there ends the matter. With one line, entire materials chapter, one number came. But is that the enough item for costing? No. For that we have a separate topic: materials cost, ascertainment, control, computations. All these things are going into the depth of it. It's not just one line, not just one entry, which normally happens in financial accounting. Of course, that does not mean financial accounting is something inferior to cost and management accounting. We are not comparing like that. Both are important, but both have different purposes. That is the point we have to understand. Who is the ultimate user of financial accounting? Usually the public. For public companies, the investors, shareholders, and potential investors, those will be the general users majorly of financial accounting data. But what about cost and management accounting? Name itself indicates. Who is the user? Management, not outsiders. Financial accounting data for public companies is public. If you want to know what is the overall cost of any company, which is a listed company, you can just download the financial statements and you can see that. It's a public information. It is not confidential. Whereas the cost and management accounting information is very internal in nature. It is confidential. It is only known to management. It should be only known to management. It is not made public. You cannot ask for the open cost data of any of the companies. Of course, government can ask, but public need not know and will not know a lot of these items, which cost and management accounting does. That is another difference. So one of the main points here to note is when we look at materials cost or employees cost, we are talking about a simple multiplication of quantity or hours multiplied with rate per unit or rate per hour, as the case may be. So the computation of material cost and labor cost is more or less straightforward, whereas the computation of overheads is not that straightforward because we are not talking about the actual overheads cost. Actual overheads cost will be known at the end of the period only, which will anyway be there in the financial statements. So we are not talking about that in this costing subject. Does it mean we will ignore actual? No, it will not be. We will consider actual also later. But before that, even before the actual overheads are incurred, we should know the overhead absorption rates. That is what we call as absorption costing. So overheads here, what kind of costing method we are using is absorption costing method. This is the crux of costing, we can say. I would always say that anybody who understands what is this absorption, first of all, conceptually, that means costing is understood. This is the essence of the entire subject of cost and management accounting. So this has to be very clearly known. What is this absorption rate? Different names can be used for this. Sometimes we call it recovery rate. Sometimes we call it absorption. Overheads recovered, overheads absorbed, like that. Overheads applied. Any of these names can be used. Names apart. Concept is same. Concept is what? We are supposed to find out predetermined overhead rates. Predetermined, not after incurring them. Means any company, any organization is supposed to know the overhead rates which are predetermined before even they are being incurred. And these predetermined overhead rates are applied or absorbed so that we will know the overheads cost. But this overheads cost is not actual overheads cost. This is absorbed overheads only. Of course, it will be compared with actual overheads later. And there can be under absorption, over absorption. We will treat them in the accounts. That is all different. We will come to that in the details of the chapter. But before going to all that, first thing, basic thing that we should know is in costing, we are not interested in the actual overheads in the first place. We are interested in a predetermined overhead rate. And that overhead rate is used as a basis for absorbing that overheads cost in computation or ascertainment of the total cost. So what is the difference here? Materials, labor and overheads. Materials cost, labor cost is possible to be known in advance always. Let us say you take any object. You take any particular object which is around you. Let us say you take a mobile phone. A mobile phone has to be manufactured. A mobile phone has to be manufactured. Of course, it will involve material cost, labor cost, overheads cost. Everything will be incurred. No doubt about that. But the point is, how much material cost will be incurred for each mobile? Is it something unknown? Every mobile to mobile it will change? No, it will not. What components are required, what materials are required, what are the inputs for manufacturing this particular mobile, the company knows already. Everything it knows. So there is no secret in that for the company. Public may not know. We are not scientists, so we don't need to know. But company knows definitely what the material cost is supposed to be incurred per each phone. Do they know that? Absolutely they will know that. Because they know all the thousands of components that they require and what is the cost of each of those components, and just multiplying them you will get material cost. That's it. As simple as that. Numbers might change, number of materials might change, the description of materials might change, but concept is same. What are the materials to be used? Multiply with rate and you get materials cost. Simple. And on the other side, labor cost also. It will not be something which is unknown. It will be known. It is already a common thing. When a company starts a production, does it not know how much it pays to each laborer? Let us imagine it is a contract labor system rather than a fixed salary based system, because that is what we will use in many of the cases in costing, though the reality may be different. So we have to keep in mind when we say labor here, mainly we are talking about labor as a variable cost, which means number of hours based cost will be incurred. So to manufacture a particular phone, how many hours of work is required? Is it something secret? Will it change from phone to phone once again? No, it will not, because the system is same, the kind of manufacturing process is same, machines are all same, people working on those machines will more or less take the same time with little bit of deviation. But ultimately, how much it costs from the labor point of view to manufacture a mobile phone is known, and it is more or less standardized. There is nothing much different in that. But the point is, when we look at the overheads, this is where we will come to know about them only when they are incurred. We don't know any of them completely at the beginning itself. If you ask any person who is manufacturing a product, what kinds of materials are required for this? Completely, it is a known thing. How much time it will take and what is the labor cost involved in this? Completely known thing. How much overheads will be involved in manufacturing this? For example, for manufacturing this phone, there is a production, that's okay. In addition to that, there will be marketing expenses, selling expenses, distribution expenses. There will be office and administration expenses. There will be, definitely. There will be accountants, there will be finance team, and there will be HR people. So many people who are supporting the production process, but what is going to be the overall cost in this is something which normally is not automatically known. In other words, for technical purposes, we can call these things as indirect expenses. Usually the materials cost and labor cost is direct. That does not mean there will not be indirect materials, indirect labor. There will be also. But usually, when we say just materials, we are talking about direct materials. When we say labor, just labor, we are talking about direct labor. There will be indirect materials cost also, indirect labor cost also. If it is indirect, it will be called as overheads only. So what is overheads here is an indirect cost which cannot be directly traced with the product or production. So when we cannot do that, what is the CFO's salary included in this phone's cost? How much amount of the CFO salary is included in this phone is difficult to ascertain. How much materials cost is reasonably easy to ascertain, because if you know the details of the materials. So the point is, when we look at the overheads costs, these are some things which are not directly traceable. Now the question comes. Let us say this same company which is manufacturing these mobile phones wants to fix a price. Of course, every company wants to do that. Again, for simplicity purposes, not that it will happen exactly like this. How to fix a price? Simple, logically speaking, okay, boss, cost plus profit. This is my price. Okay, very good. How much profit they want, it is left to them. Let us leave it. That is not our business. But question is how much cost they are incurring. How much cost they are incurring? Are they incurring the cost first and fixing the price first? That is a question. While incurring this cost, you have material cost. Again, always you have to think three elements of cost: material, labor, overheads, which means all the three elements are incurred for sure. Question is, can they say that let me first manufacture, let me complete the production. After I complete the production, I will think about how much profit to be added. Then I will determine the selling price. I will let you know how much price I will be charging from you. Like this, can a company do? Is it possible? It is not possible practically, and even conceptually also that doesn't make sense. The company should know the price first. It should determine the price first. It should announce that. People should know what price they are going to buy this product. Okay, forget about manufacturing. Even if you consider any other thing like say a contract or a job or something like that, there also, if you go to a tender and you have to quote a price, you have to give a quotation, and you need to quote the price, quoted price, whatever the price you want to quote, you have to quote. Can you say, because overheads cost is something what I don't know, let me first incur that, then I will let you know the price? Is it possible? No, no tender will be accepted like that. So the point is simple logic. Price has to be determined before even incurring the cost. Though it looks like first cost is incurred, then profit is added, then price comes. No, it is not possible. In reality, price has to be fixed before even the manufacturing starts. So how to do that? There, materials cost, easy to imagine, ascertain. Why? Because we know exactly how much materials will be required to manufacture a product. There is no secret in that, and that is not going to change from one product to one output point to another one. So if you manufacture, let us say, a car, every car will have the same components, same brand car, same model car. Every car will have same components, means every car will have same cost of materials. Will there be a huge difference there? No, there will not be. How many people working there? Same people will be there. Persons may not be same. Number of hours, number of people, and effort that is required to manufacture will not change drastically, because everything is designed already. Everything is already set. Which machines to be used, how much time it takes, what is the process. Everything is mostly set. For materials cost and labor cost, there is no issue. Again, the issue comes with overheads only. Because in case of overheads, we don't know exactly in each car how much will be the overheads cost component. We don't know. Nobody can know that. So what is the solution for this? Can we say, first let me incur the cost, then I will split it, then I will add to the car, then I will tell the price? No, it is not possible. So what is the solution for it? Simple solution. Solution is, you need to have a predetermined overhead rate. You cannot have actual overheads cost to be included in ascertainment of the total cost. Rather, you should have a predetermined overhead rate. That is what is crux of costing. How to compute those predetermined overhead rates, that we will see in the chapter of overheads. And once that predetermined overhead rate is computed, what is the use of that? That has to be used for absorbing that into the total cost in the form of overheads cost. For example, just for understanding purposes, though there will be a lot of other things, let us say hourly rate is to be computed. One of them is called machine hour rate. How to compute that is a separate topic. Completely, there is a detailed chapter on that. That is the chapter of overheads. Just for understanding purposes, let us say a machine hour rate is the basis that a company wants to absorb the overheads. That is a predetermined rate. So according to so many computations done, everything and all, so 100 rupees per machine hour is the overhead recovery rate. This is one aspect. This is a computation of predetermined overhead recovery rate. What is the use now of this 100 per machine hour? Yes. Is it real? No, it is not real. It is predetermined, imaginary. We are just ascertaining it on a almost imaginary basis. But of course, using the past experience, we are doing that. How to do? We will see in the chapter of overheads. Done already. Let us say 100 rupees per machine hour is the machine hour rate. Then what to do with this 100 rupees? This has to be absorbed. For example, let us say for a particular product, it takes 10 hours, means machine hours here, if at all, to manufacture it. Then what will be the overheads cost component in that total cost of the product? Simple. Now you can simply multiply this 10 hours with 100. That means 1000 rupees is going to be the overheads cost component that will be included in the total cost. Now what we try to do here, in case of materials and labor, already you know what is this quantity. Materials quantity is known. How to measure that is known. Measurement is straightforward. Is it tons, grams, kilos, liters, meters, part, per part? What is that? Measurement changes, but every material has its own measurement, and that is not secret. That will be known. Labor also, time measurement, hours, known. Overheads, there is no measurement. So we have to determine that. Which measurement has to be used? So what we are trying to do, an abstract thing, we are making it concrete, which is not real, which is abstract, which is imaginary thing. We are making it concrete. How? By having one overheads recovery basis. There are so many types of basis on which the overheads can be recovered. Machine hour rate is one of them. So what we made now, boss, if machine hour rate is the basis, number of machine hours is the quantity multiplied with rate. Rate is what? Rate is what we have already calculated. That is the predetermined overheads rate. Multiply, you got the overhead cost. So in order to make this simple multiplication, we need to have a lot of background work, wherein we should know first thing first, what is the basis of absorption, recovery, whatever the name. Basis is important. Second, whatever the basis it is, that rate per dash, how to calculate that predetermined overhead rate is important. That is a separate thing. Once we have that, applying is just multiplication. That is where the overhead recovery or overhead absorption or applying that will happen, and then that will be considered in the total cost. So the point to be noted, what is the uniqueness of the overheads is, we are using absorption costing method here. Means we are not taking the actual overheads, rather we are taking overheads on the basis of some predetermined rate. How to determine those predetermined rates, and how to absorb them, and how to treat under absorption or absorption, all of these things are part of chapter 4. That is overheads. A very, very crucial chapter. Conceptually speaking, I would say the heart of costing is this. Again, if you do these things mechanically, it's a different story. Most of them are procedural. Same type of procedures will be followed for many questions. Mechanically, computations. If you are doing, of course we have to do computations. But are we knowing why are we doing them? Is the crucial aspect. You should not do these computations mechanically, just as a procedure. You should know why are you doing it? What is the reason? And how are you doing it, of course, comes later. How comes later? Why comes first? That is conceptual learning. How comes first? Why generally is ignored? That is very mechanical learning, which doesn't make sense and which is not useful. I know a lot of people do that, but again, I can only pity them because they are not understanding the importance of the subject. They are only thinking about the number of marks that can be scored. But if you understand the subject, understand the concepts, why are you doing it, then marks will automatically come because you know the procedure anyway. So knowing how is easy, knowing why is important. That is also easy, but you cannot ignore that part. That is the crucial aspect of costing as a subject. So these three things, which are the three things? Materials, labor, overheads. These are the three components of cost, which are also called as elements of cost, we can say. Material, labor, overheads. We have three different chapters for that. So that is the first category, that is elements of cost. Then we can talk about some of the methods of costing. Methods of costing. Elements of cost. Methods of costing. Costing is a process, right? Cost is a noun, costing is a verb. That we should understand the difference. So elements of cost is over materials, labor, overheads. Methods of costing means what? There are various types of industries in the world. There are manufacturing industries, there are service sector industries, there are contract based industries, job based industries. So for each type of an industry, each type of an organization, there can be different methods of costing which can be used. So methods of costing are those which are applicable for a particular type of organization. These are not like universal, like elements of cost which is there for every organization. Methods of costing are not universal for every organization. A particular organization might use a particular method. What kind of organizations can use what kind of methods? That is all the part of this methods of costing. Like unit costing, batch costing. Which kind of organizations will use that? Naturally, which are manufacturing it in bulk production. Like for example, pharmaceutical companies. Like even for example, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, batches they produce. Like biscuit manufacturing companies, FMCG companies. They can use these methods. Of course, as far as the chapter is concerned, it's a very small and simple topic. It's not something very special also, because ultimately it will be an extension of what we already do in the form of cost sheet. Cost sheet is the overall format of how to ascertain the total cost. It's a format. But again, if you only go with the format without the essence, it is of no use, it becomes mechanical. Rather than that, what is cost sheet? Just naming all the things which are all parts of the cost. Okay, materials, labor. Some type of overheads, like production overheads. We call that something. Let us say works cost. Like that, some adjustments to be done for stocks, work in progress. Then you have to add office and administration overheads also. Then you have to add selling and distribution overheads also. So why are we doing all this? All of them can be just added one shot now. Then we don't need costing. Costing is about details. Costing is not just about total ascertainment and total things. So it is not the aggregate things which matter here. It is the minute details that matter in costing. So what is the format of that is cost sheet. Simply it's a presentation issue of various elements and various components of cost in a presentable manner in one type of format. Once you understand that, unit costing is same as cost sheet, nothing different. Batch costing might have a certain bit of more application oriented questions, including some of the concepts like economic batch quantity. Those are part of one of the methods of costing, that is unit and batch costing. Same way, some other industries which are job based industries, those can use job costing, and some industries which are on contract basis, generally the civil construction works, building roads, dams, build construction of buildings, all these things are contract based. Let us say building or constructing a metro project, these are contracts. Generally they are time wise, they take longer time, and cost wise also those are heavy. So all those type of organizations might use contract costing. How to use that? That is one of the methods of costing. So unit costing, batch costing. Job costing is also similar to contract costing. We can say job is a small contract, contract is a big job. Both are similar. But again, problems wise, the case wise, the kind of the inputs that we get in each of these methods is not same. So there will be different questions on that. So all of them are forming part of what? These are methods of costing. Methods of costing is the second area. So similar to that, manufacturing industries may have different processes. So they may use process costing. or operation costing. So this is usually a method of costing, once again used by manufacturing organizations. So that is process costing and operation costing. That is another chapter. So these are all methods of costing, and not only them, including up to service costing also, we can call them methods of costing. So what happens in these methods of costing is we are going to understand different types of industries. How do they use these methods? For ultimately what? Ultimately what? Ultimately cost ascertainment only. Ascertainment of cost is the objective. Control of cost is another objective, which will be there for certain items, not for all. But most of these items will have ascertainment of cost as the main objective. As an extension of process costing, joint products and byproducts will be also there. And how to split the cost when there are joint products among themselves, how to split, what are the different types of basis with which the overall cost can be split, that is joint products. Byproducts is another aspect which is not of that much value, but once again how to treat the cost of the byproducts as well as any scrap value that arises out of selling that byproduct. Those are all part of joint products byproducts chapter. And service costing is usually, as the name itself indicates, used by the service sector industries, including transport sector or airlines or even educational institutions, hospitals, banks, insurance companies. Any of these service sector organizations can use service costing. That is also another one of the methods of costing. So if you observe carefully, here we have these three are elements of cost. What are those three? Materials, labor, and overheads. These are the elements of cost. And then we have methods of costing in chapters 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Unit costing, batch costing, job costing, contract costing, process costing, service costing, all of them are methods of costing. And there is one more thing, which is activity based costing also, which is generally an extension of the chapter of overheads, but we can call that also as method of costing. Why? Because that will be in contrast with the normal regular routine absorption costing. Activity based costing can be used universally. So when we say activity based costing, this application of activity based costing can happen universally, in the sense any industry. We have so many types of methods for different types of industries, but activity based costing, if details are available, any company can use that. That is why it makes it very important for us to understand activity based costing also, which can be also called as another method of costing. So ultimately we have elements of cost, methods of costing, each of them, so many chapters are there in this methods of costing. And we have techniques. We can call the third category here as techniques of costing. Why these are techniques? Once again, these techniques are possible to be used across the organizations. Any organization can use them universally. So here we have three chapters. One is standard costing, marginal costing, and budgetary control, preparation of budgets. Standard costing can be sometimes also called as performance evaluation, performance management. As the name indicates, usually the organizations will set some cost standards and they have to be compared with actuals, and we have to find out variances. Simple. Logically speaking, that's what standard costing is all about. How to do that is the subject topic of standard costing itself. Marginal costing is mostly related to the variable costing, and here in this chapter we will have profit volume analysis. So we can even call SPV analysis, or sales, profit, volume, whatever the sequence we call it. But ultimately, that analysis is part of this marginal costing, and also some short-term decision making can be done by using and applying the technique of marginal costing. So those all aspects will be discussed in the chapter of marginal costing, that is chapter 14. And preparation of budgets and using the budgets for control purposes as budgetary control. So that is all part of chapter 15. So different types of budgets, be it functional budgets or flexible budgets. Budget generally is about future, we know that, name itself indicates, and it is a forecasting technique using which an organization can understand what is the cost it is going to incur. So in general sense, there can be a possible confusion between standard and budget, but if you understand the subtle difference, standard is something which tells us about how much the cost should be. Budget is something which tells us how much the cost would be or could be. So standard says how much the cost should be. That is fixed. That is standard. How do we know that? From the past experience. Ideally, the cost really should not exceed the standard. Budget is not about that. Budget is about a forecast of the costs and of course revenues and of course profit. So ultimately, these three, standard costing, marginal costing, budgetary control, can be called as techniques of costing. So we have elements of cost, methods of costing, techniques of costing. In fact, activity-based costing can also be called as technique of costing. One of the techniques it can be called as. Even if you want to call it a method of costing also, it is okay. It will fall in both the categories. We don't have to worry about it. Definitely it is so important that it has the characteristics of both a method as well as a technique. That itself shows how important it is. In the modern scenario, current technologically advanced world, activity-based costing is the real costing actually that happens in the world. So very, very crucial concept. And one more point to be noted is also that these techniques of costing, particularly standard costing, marginal costing, decision making, budgets and budgetary control, along with activity-based costing, these will be in final level also. So having a proper understanding at intermediate level is a very crucial thing, because here if the foundation is strong about the concepts of these four areas, particularly standard costing, marginal costing, budgets and ABC, they will be again tested in final, of course, with little more complicated situations and little more, you can say, detailed information given than at intermediate level. Size of the question will only change, but concept will be same. So understanding them here should not be only with the purpose of obtaining some marks in say enter. It should be again from a understanding concepts, so that for life, entire lifelong, we will be able to apply them whenever required, including in say final. So these four topics, we can call them as techniques of costing. ABC falls in both the categories. It can be called as a method also, it can be called as a technique also. That doesn't matter. Whatever we call it, ultimately, that's what it is. A very, very crucial method and technique in real life. Then what are left in the syllabus? These are the two things. Of course, cost sheet is a presentation item. And using the same way, in case of cost sheet, as the name indicates, that shows the total cost in a statement format, like this, statement format. But if you use the same thing for accounting format with the debit credit, that's what is cost accounting systems. That is the fourth category. So entire syllabus of cost and management accounting can be classified into these four categories. Cost accounting systems or cost ascertainment can happen with just by simply presenting the overall cost in a structured manner, that is cost sheet. And if the same thing happens not like a statement but like an account, then it is cost accounting systems, wherein we'll have to open lot of accounts. So this is as good as conceptually similar to financial accounting, but of course there will be a difference between the cost that is coming out from the cost accounting systems and the financial accounting systems. And if at all these two are maintained separately, then how to reconcile the profits in accordance with the financial accounting systems and cost accounting systems is another topic, which is part of this cost accounting systems and cost accounting aspects, we can call that. So there, reconciliation, preparation of cost accounts, ledgers, and if at all the integrated accounts are maintained, wherein financial accounting and cost accounting both are integrated, then how to prepare those accounts. These all aspects will be considered in cost accounting systems. So usually for a CA intermediate student, in this costing paper or C&MA paper, these are the various aspects. Of course, the introduction is always a theoretical aspect of basically understanding what is costing, what is cost accounting, what is management accounting, and what are the essentials of a good cost accounting system, what are the different terminologies that are used here, cost control, cost ascertainment, is it same cost control and cost reduction, are there any differences? Those aspects, basic aspects of costing, introduction to the costing is one theory chapter. That theory chapter will definitely contain some questions also, which will be asked theory questions also in the main examination. Usually in this costing paper, usually we talk about the structure of the costing paper. If you look at it, first question will be containing 4 sub questions, each of them 5 marks, that will be 20 marks, and this is a compulsory question, no choice. After that, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions will be there. And usually from the past examinations patterns, this last question is also 4 into 5, 20 marks, and this question will be theory question. The 6th question is theory question in general. So first question is compulsory, of course, problems. 6th question is theory questions. So if we take theory also seriously and study the theory questions also, which can be attempted in the 6th question, they will be scoring also. But once again, the coverage of the theory questions for this paper is so vast that it is better to have your own notes on some of the at least crucial aspects in this entire syllabus of costing, and have short answers for those questions. So theory has to be separately studied, and notes has to be prepared for that. Your own notes has to be prepared in your own handwriting, so that at the time when you actually go for the exam, the day before the exam, you can refer to that notes and revise it quickly, and that can be useful in the main exam as an insurance policy for sure. Why I say it is an insurance policy? Because if by chance any of these questions is so complicated that you are not in a position to answer, then theory questions can become your saviors. They come to your rescue. So that is why cannot ignore theory completely. It is an insurance. But again, as I said, there will be always some people who don't want insurance. They want to take the risk. It is up to you. But my suggestion will be definitely to take that insurance, so that your risk will be less. And worst case scenario, if any question is so complicated, or you think that it will take so much time, which it may not be worth in the main exam, then you will have the cushion of leaving it and going for theory questions. That is why cannot completely underestimate the theory questions also in this paper. So that is the other aspect of it. Definitely chapter number 1, being a theory chapter completely, will have some theory questions. 1 or 2 of them can be appearing as part of the 6th question. Within that, theory questions will be there in every chapter, not only in chapter 1. Every chapter will have theory questions. Sir, where can we find them? There is no need to find them separately in the space. They are there available at the end of the chapter in the essay material. Those questions only, at least if you write your answers, that will be at least enough as an insurance policy before you go to the exam. But that is a separate aspect altogether. But coming to the remaining questions, usually, again, there is no rule. Usually, these are all 2 questions of 10 marks each. 2 questions. So, what are we talking about here? 4 multiplied with 2, 8 questions are there of 10 marks each. Right? 80 marks. And of course, theory another 20 marks, which is choice if at all you think, and a compulsory question of 20 marks. Compulsory question, 4 questions of 5 marks each. So that is 100 marks. If you keep this last question as choice, normal circumstances, that should be ideal. But if any of these questions is so complicated or so vast, which will take a lot of time, then you better leave it and go for theory. So that is a choice that you have to make, and your preparation has to be definitely according to that choice. But please don't think that theory will make you pass this paper. Definitely not. It is only an insurance policy. It is not the one which guides your success or failure in this paper. Earlier it used to be, but in the new syllabus, generally with this 120 marks question only, it can be easily left out as choice without any problem. However, when can you do that so confidently by taking that risk? Only when you are so thorough with all the other questions. So 8 questions of 10 marks each and 4 questions of 5 marks each. I am only talking about problems. That means total of 12 questions are guaranteed here. Small and big all put together. Where from they will come? They will come from here only. Let us say materials cost, a 5 marks question can come. Employees cost, 5 or 10 marks question can come. Overheads, guaranteed 10 marks question. Activity based costing, guaranteed 10 marks question. Cost sheet and cost accounting system put together, 10 marks. Unit batch costing, smaller ones, 5 marks. Job costing, smaller one, 5 marks. Contract costing, possibly 10 marks or sometimes 5 marks also. Process costing, 10 marks guaranteed. Joint products by products, generally 5 marks, occasionally 10 marks. Service costing, guaranteed 10 marks. Standard costing, 5 or 10, any of them. Marginal costing and decision making, if you observe the recent papers, is now actually almost coming to 15-20 marks also. In some of the exams, recently 20 marks was asked from marginal costing, which means more focus is being given by ICAI on that chapter. So forget about that extra things. 10 to guaranteed, 10 to 15 is almost assured from marginal costing, and short-term decision making put together. Budgets 10 marks guaranteed. So like this, each of these questions, total there are 12 questions that are there which are problems. And in this we have 15 chapters, right? We are talking about problems. In the case of problems, first chapter leave it out, it is theory. That means out of 15, 14 chapters are there. And actually these two things can be combined also. Usually two questions separately will not come from that. If one comes for 5 marks, another can be for 10 marks. But again, you can combine them as one chapter. Same way, process costing, joint products by products can be considered as one chapter. Considered. Not necessarily only one question will come, but can be considered as one chapter. So how many are there now? We have eliminated 1, so 14 it became. Two things we clubbed means 12. Exactly same. Which means every chapter, not only in this list of chapters, every chapter, automatically there is a question that is guaranteed of either 5 marks or 10 marks, depending upon the nature of the chapter. Definitely, we can identify whether 5 marks question will come or 10 marks question will come from that. So that is the costing syllabus and costing paper, and approach towards this paper has to be more scientific. And again, as I said earlier, concept based, application oriented thought process is required, not mechanical. So all the 4 aspects, elements of cost, methods of costing, techniques of costing, and cost accounting systems, all of them will give us fantastic marks in this paper. That is cost and management accounting. And I hope you learn these topics very conceptually, practice them well. What are the key things for scoring well in costing, if at all? It has to be summarized. I would say, first thing first, concepts. Without conceptual clarity, mechanical solving of problems in costing always leads to a problematic situation in the exams. Because if a new question comes, someone who is not conceptually clear will never be able to face that. They'll feel it complicated. So many times we hear that. Oh, it's complicated. Nothing is complicated. When you know the concepts, nothing is complicated. When you are saying it is complicated, automatically that means you are not so clear in the concept. So conceptual clarity is very, very important. Plus, Speed is important. Speed in the examination. That will not come suddenly for that 3 hours. That requires a lot of practice. Lot of practice. And when you practice that on paper, not by just referring to the book, when you practice it on paper, you will be able to develop that speed. Otherwise, what happens? Same complaints will come. Time was not sufficient. I know the answers, but I could not answer all questions. I could answer only 70%. I could answer only 60%. All these things will come only because of lack of required speed. That is dangerous. So, conceptual clarity plus speed are crucial. But once again, is speed enough? No. Lot of times it is observed that few students are very quick in solving, but their answers are all wrong. What is the use of that? Solved so quickly with wrong answers will not give you still good marks. That is why accuracy is also important. So while learning this subject itself, you should focus on your ultimate outcomes. What are your outcomes here? One, conceptual clarity that comes from learning. Of course, attending the classes which teach you conceptually the subject of costing. This is classes. This is the learning process. Classes will help you there to understand the concepts. This is about practice, where speed can be developed. Without that, it is not possible to solve all the 12 questions within time. It is difficult. Let us be practical and honest here. So, practice only will make that outcome happen, that is speed. Then accuracy comes from what? It comes from focus. Why some people do the solutions all the times inaccurately? Why the answer will not come correctly? It's not a big deal, right? After all, you are just doing calculations. And what calculations you are doing? Only for addition, multiplication, division, and subtraction. Other than that, what great things we are doing mathematics in this? Nothing. These things also we can't do on calculator. We can't get the correct answer. Why that happens? Lack of focus, means recklessness. That is the only thing. If you focus, easily accuracy will be achieved. All the three. With proper learning, you will get concepts. With proper practice, you will get speed. With proper focus, you will get accuracy. Once you get them, then you will get a fantastic score in costing. There are people, of course, who scored heavily in this subject, 90s, 95, 98 also, like that. So, possibility is there for a fantastic score in this subject of cost and management accounting, that is paper 3 in CA Intermediate. But once again, to sum it up, in order to score well, our approach has to be correct. Our learning outcomes have to be known very clearly. And more than that, our open-mindedness to face any kind of situation should be always intact. And theory can be kept as an insurance policy, which is important also. So, with that, we can conclude this introductory session to costing. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Thanks.